Hi everyone, today we are going to present on the effectiveness of tax-based incentive in promoting electric vehicle adoption. I am Eng Jinqi, the group leader, and joining me are AMSYAR NURHAKIM, SANJEEV SINGH, Ong Sin Yi, dan CHAM SINGH. For the introduction, I will now pass it over to Sanjeev.
Now, I'll begin the introduction by explaining that electric vehicles or EVs are part of Malaysia's broader strategy to build a sustainable green economy. To support this, the government has introduced tax-based incentives like exemptions on import and excise duties to make sure EVs are more affordable and attractive to consumers. However, adoption remains slow due to high costs, public doubts, and limited charging infrastructure. Despite these challenges, there's a growing support such as free public charging station and policy incentives. In this presentation, we explore the government's efforts in strengthening the EV industry and assess how these initiatives have impacted EV adoption among Malaysians.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Compared to other countries, the exposure to EV in Malaysia is relatively low. One of the barriers to EV adoption in Malaysia is the narrow tax incentive for the public. The high purchase price is always the major barrier for potential buyers of EV. But the tax incentive introduced by the government of Malaysia are narrow and do not directly address the high upfront cost of the EV. For example, the 2,500 ringgit Malaysia tax release focuses mainly on the installation and use of the charging facilities. Next, the barrier is the uncertainty of Malaysia EV tax policy. It undermines the confidence among both consumers and manufacturers. For example, Malaysia introduced the full road tax exemption for EV. From 2026 onwards, the road tax will no longer be free for the EV owners. The new road tax calculation method will be based on the EV power output in kilowatts. Although the new EV road tax rate is 85% cheaper compared to the internal combustion engine vehicles, but it still offers less financial relief than the full exemption previously offered. Higher performance EV with greater power output may still incur significantly higher tax charges. Besides that, in Malaysia, the growth of local EV manufacturing remains limited, partly due to the short duration of the available tax incentive. EV can enter in Malaysia market in two ways. One is completely built up CBU or completely knocked out CKD. So to support the EV adoption, all CBU EV are exempted from the import duties and excise duties, but only last for 4 years. And for the CKD EVs, the components used for the local assembly are fully exempted from the import duties, but it lasts for 6 years. So it is definitely not enough time for the investment and also the long-term planning for the manufacturers. Same with the public, the tax incentive for the manufacturers are limited. Only manufacturers for the EV charging equipment are eligible for the tax exemption. Last, the tax incentive eligibility criteria is too strict. For example, the EV charger manufacturer need to provide internships or training or achieve 20% of the local value added. And do you know that the import and excise duty exemption applies only to the premium electric vehicle, meaning that low-cost electric vehicles that less than 100,000 are not allowed to sell in Malaysia.
Next, I will be presenting a comparative overview of EV tax incentive practices across key global regions such as in Asia, Europe, and also in North America, and also reflect on Malaysia's current position in this landscape. We'll start with the tax incentive in United States of America. In US, buyers can receive a federal tax credit of up to $7,500 with additional states level rebates and legislation discounts. The Inflation Reduction Act also supports domestic EV and battery productions, making this incentive very holistic, which is covered in both demand and supply. Notably, transferable tax credits allow cost reduction at the point of sales, and every $1,000 incentive can raise EV sales by 2.6%. Next, I will talk about the tax incentive in China. China's success lies in its dual incentive approach, which means that buyers enjoy an EV tax exemptions, while producers benefit from green manufacturing credits and infrastructure support. With over 30% of EV adoption, China's integrated strategy proved that coordinated fiscal and non-fiscal incentive are the key. Next, I will talk about the tax incentive in Norway. Norway leads with 91.6% of EV adoption in 2024. This is driven by VAT and registration tax exemptions, work toll waivers, and also ferry fee discounts. The more importantly is, these incentives are paired with urban planning and public transport integration, showing that the power of political commitment and cross-sectoral alignment. Next, I will talk about the tax incentive in Germany. In Germany offers up to £9,000 in subsidized and corporate tax deduction, which is promoting smart charging tariff. And last but not least, tax incentive in UK or United Kingdom, which is implement the salary sacrifice schemes, which is to enhance the urban congestion, which is provide the urban congestion exemption, which is to encourage adoption, particularly among employees in urban areas. Before I end my speech, I will make a comparison between Malaysian tax incentive compared with other regions. I would say that based on my analysis, I would say that Malaysia's EV incentive are consumer-centric, limited to only import duty exemption and also only provide RM2,500 tax relief for charging parts. There is no support for local EV assembly and also focus on manufacturing, such as producing a battery production and also nationwide infrastructure. As a result, in Malaysia, EV adoption only remains below 1%. I think that's all for me. Thank you so much.
In methodology, this study used a qualitative approach which relying entirely on secondary data to assess the impact of tax incentive on EV adoption in Malaysia. We focus on publications and reports from 2016 to 2025 to ensure that the data is both relevant and current. Using the academic databases like ScienceDirect, Google Scholar, and Scopus, we selected 17 key scholarly articles and official reports based on their credibility and relevance. We also referenced policy documents from NIDA, the Ministry of Finance, and budget reports from 2022 to 2024. This approach allowed us to evaluate Malaysia's EV tax strategy and compare it against global EV markets, including countries like Norway, China, and the US.
Next, I will continue on the result and discussion part. Based on the research in literature review, the narrow scope, short duration, and uncertainty of the tax incentive didn't encourage EV adoption because it does not address high upfront cost of the EV. Tax policy focus is not what the public want. Consumers always wish to have tax incentive on purchase price rather than on charging equality. Malaysia tax exemption is only available to EV price above 100,000 ringgit Malaysia, which are premium vehicle, especially for the B40 groups. As a result, the current incentive structure fails to stimulate mass adoption, limiting EV ownership mainly to the higher income group, for example, M40 and T20. Now, I will go for the manufacturer. First, the strict criteria for tax incentive create high compliance and also administrative burden. Small startup EV companies are often excluded from receiving the support due to limited capacity to meet the requirements set by government. Second, the narrow scope for the tax incentive focus only in EV charging facility. This weakens the development of the whole EV value chain as there is little support for the EV production. For example, the battery, innovation, and other critical areas. Third, the short duration for the tax incentive poses a problem. Short timeline prevent long-term investment and planning, and policy expiry like the 2025 road tax exemption. This creates uncertainty for the new player in the market. Last, the complex tax approval process that involves multiple government agencies. This causes delay and unpredictability and discourage more companies and also investors from participating in the EV sector.
Greetings, my name is CHAM, and I will be presenting about the comparative effectiveness across regions. In North America, the United States offer federal tax credits of $7,500 for the acquisition of new EVs, supplemented by transferable tax credits that allow customers to claim credits at the time you purchase it. This has all reduced costs at point of purchase and enhanced purchase intent. As a result of their incentives, every $1,000 tax credit has been associated with a 2.6% rise in EV sales. So for the states, they really shine through with their incentive design, but effective effectiveness is still hampered by inconsistent application across states. Moving on to China, China leads the global EV market. The new energy vehicle NEV tax exemption has been extended until 2027 in their country, supporting continued growth in EV sales. Their success is also driven by a comprehensive policy mix, including subsidies, parking benefits, and non-fiscal incentives like charging infrastructures. Influenced by the type of governance they have, China succeeds through centralized, policy-driven growth that harmonizes both demand and supply. In Europe, or more specifically in Norway, a country that has been famous for being a global leader in sustainable practices, they have implemented full exemptions from value added tax, VAT, registration tax, tolls, and lower ferry and road charges. Norway is also doing a really good job by linking EV incentives with public transport investment and politics, creating an environment with high sustainable awareness nationally. To the side of Norway, in Germany, they offer subsidies of up to 9,000 euros as well as corporate tax breaks. Smart charging policies have also been introduced to optimize grid usage, all of which contributed to a 250% increase in EV adoption in Germany from 2020 to 2021. Now, finally, let's look at our beloved country, Malaysia, and try to examine why maybe, say, strategies in China don't work the same way here. A key reason China's strategies are effective compared to Malaysia lies in its centralized governance, enabling large-scale, complex policy implementation to be done incredibly effectively. Malaysia, by contrast, faces fragmented institutional frameworks and limited fiscal space, which constrains the rollout of any governmental policies. So while China leverages its policy synchrony, Malaysia must first address foundational gaps in the country before similar strategies can yield satisfying outcomes. Overall, tax incentives tend to work best as part of a broader system of sustainable strategies that depend on local context. That's all from me. Thank you so much for listening.
In conclusion, our study found that while Malaysia has introduced important tax-based incentives, they remain limited in scope, temporary in nature, and restrictive in applications. These limitations hinder broader consumer participations and reduce the attractiveness for manufacturers to invest locally in EV production. Most benefits are accessed by middle and high-income consumers. To improve it, we suggest that extending the duration and coverage of tax incentives, including for affordable EVs and supply chains investment like battery manufacturing and R&D. Second, promoting government-industry collaboration to build charging infrastructure and promote technology transfer. Lastly, creating a transparent monitoring system to track the progress and make timely adjustments. These steps are crucial for Malaysia to align its fiscal tools with environmental goals and accelerate the shift to sustainable transportation. That's all from our group. Thank you for your time and attention.